how you withdraw from your investments once you become financially independent, once you retire early, is one of the most important aspects of FIRE. And there are two primary ways that you can do so that I want to discuss the pros and cons with you today. Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to On Cash Flow, where I help you become a master of your own cash flow. Now let's get started. Let me go ahead and start by giving you the short answer here. Those two main methods are the constant dollar strategy and the percentage of portfolio strategy. So the constant dollar strategy, basically you take a set amount and you adjust your withdrawals upwards by inflation or whatever the CPI happens to be, which is the Consumer Price Index. The percentage of portfolio strategy, on the other hand, takes a fixed percentage of your portfolio value and then you withdraw that on whatever recurring basis. And you do not adjust upwards for inflation. Instead, you adjust based on how your portfolio is performing. So if your portfolio is performing well, then you can withdraw more. If your portfolio is temporarily performing badly, then you will be withdrawing less. And by the way, to even get to this point where you are living off of your investments, of course, you have to know how to invest your way to financial independence. And that's why I created a complete guide on investing your way and achieving early retirement. So you definitely need to check out that video. It's gonna pop up on the screen after this video, so please make sure you stay to the end of this video. Now let's first start with probably the most common strategy, and that is the constant dollar withdrawal strategy. This is based on the classic 4% safe withdrawal rule that found that a 4% withdrawal rule adjusted upwards for inflation is usually going to survive pretty easily over 30-year periods based on historical data, even accounting for some of the worst times in history to retire. Let's start off by naming some of the pros of the constant dollar strategy. And the first one is that you have some pretty predictable income. So the whole idea is that whatever your portfolio is when you make your first withdrawal, that is your starting point. So if your portfolio is $1 million, you withdraw 4%, then your starting point is $40,000. If inflation happens to be 2% the next year, hopefully we can get back down to 2%, then you're going to increase your $40,000 withdrawal by 2%, and so on every single year. This makes it a pro because you have very predictable income. Another pro is that it has historically made it through some of the worst times in stock market history. It has survived 30-year time periods, at least 98% chance of success. And then we have updated data with F.I.R.E calculators as well that are well into the 90s based on historical data over 30-year time periods that this amount of withdrawal adjusted upwards for inflation will survive. And then lastly, another great pro of this strategy is that it is simple, right? You start with a certain amount and you adjust upwards for inflation, and that's all you really have to do. However, this strategy also comes with some cons. It does nothing to account for changes in your portfolio because your portfolio will vary depending on when you make your withdrawals. It might be up or down, or it might be the same as it was before. However, it does not take any of that into account. It just has a fixed amount, making it a little less flexible. And another con of this strategy is that since it does that, if you happen to experience a prolonged market downturn early in your retirement, or you happen to experience a high amount of inflation, it can be very, very devastating to your portfolio. And because of that, you are exposed to a high amount of sequence of returns risk by using this strategy. And lastly, this strategy is very inflexible. It is very fixed. And whenever you are inflexible, whenever you are fixed, I think that is a con, and that can be definitely a disadvantage. Next, we can discuss the pros and cons of the percentage of portfolio withdrawal strategy. However, I do want to note that there is a third most popular strategy, and that is the strategy of hitting the like button on this video. If you're enjoying this video so far, please make sure you like it, give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out, and it's a really great strategy. Okay, but seriously, getting on to the percentage of portfolio withdrawal strategy. This is where you have a reactive fixed percentage of your portfolio that you withdraw. So you might take the same percentage, which is 4%, and then you might start with that. However, you're going to adjust your withdrawals based on how your portfolio is performing. So if you only do a withdrawal once per year, for example, and your portfolio goes up by 10%, then you get a 10% increase in the amount of withdrawal that you take because it's 4% of whatever your portfolio value happens to be. However, the reverse is true as well. If your portfolio drops by 20%, then you have to reduce your withdrawals by 20%. So this is very reactive based on how your portfolio is doing, but it still applies a fixed percentage withdrawal. Some of the pros of this strategy is that it has a higher percentage of success, a higher success rate, because it's based on how the market is performing. So it adjusts with the market. So this ultimately increases your chances of success. Now, theoretically, your portfolio will last forever because it is a percentage of your portfolio. However, you should probably set a minimum floor unless you're literally willing and able to go and earn enough money to make up for that difference. But usually you're going to set a actually minimum withdrawal that you withdraw even while using this strategy. So it might end up being more than 4%. That is another pro that I have listed here, is that it does adapt to the markets. I see that as a pro because it is a flexible strategy. And I think anything that is flexible is usually going to be better than something that is fixed and rigid when it comes to your personal finances. And then thirdly, another pro of this strategy is the same as the constant dollar strategy, and that is that it is easy. It is simple to follow, right? Whatever your portfolio value happens to be, take 4% of that every single year. And you can do that, quarterly, 1% quarterly. You can do that monthly, however you want to do it. So it's pretty simple to understand, pretty simple to implement. But of course, it does come with its own set of cons. First off, you're going to have a very volatile amount of spending. And that's because the pro is that it adjusts with the market, but the con is because it adjusts with the market, you're going to be withdrawing different amounts at different times. Your portfolio, most likely, especially if you have a higher stock portfolio, then it's not going to remain constant. And therefore, you're going to have a volatility of what you can spend. Sometimes it's going to be $3,000, sometimes it's going to be $2,800, sometimes it's going to be $3,100. It just depends on how your portfolio is doing. Another con is kind of a big one for many people, and that is that this strategy does not adjust upwards for inflation. And that's because it is based on whatever your portfolio happens to be at the time. There is no CPI adjustment like with the previous strategy. Over the long run, theoretically, stocks and the stock market in general, a heavy stock portfolio should keep up with inflation. Part of that inflation should be reflected in the stock market overall, and therefore in the long run, your portfolio withdrawals should match up with inflation. However, in the short run, the stock market can be down, and therefore you would be withdrawing less, and you're not going to get that CPI, that inflation adjustment upwards. And thirdly, another con is just the unpredictable nature of this strategy overall. You have an unpredictable amount of how much you can spend. You have an unpredictable amount of if it's going to keep up with inflation. So it's very, very unpredictable. And some people just do not like that at all. And sometimes if you are not able to build a retirement strategy that is able to be flexible, then this strategy might not work out well for you. Currently, the strategy that I choose to use is the percentage of portfolio withdrawal strategy. And there's several reasons why I think this strategy is working well for me currently. The first reason is that I expect to have a super long retirement. So I retired at the age of 27, and I could easily live to be age 80 based on my lifestyle, based on family members and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, that is a total of 53 years in retirement. So that's a really long time. And so this strategy has a higher chance of success over long time periods. And so that's why I think it applies well to me. Secondly, I'm not totally retired. I'm not 100% relying off of my investments. I'm only using my investments for part of my income. I am barista-fi, if you like to put a label on it. That's because I still choose to earn some money. I'm definitely not working a full-time job. I can tell you that much, not even close. But I still choose to get some money from outside sources. I still choose to earn some money other than from, a regular W-2 career. And so I'm able to then make up the difference where my volatility of withdrawals might be. I'm able to make up that difference sometimes with the income that I make from other sources. Another reason is that when it comes to my actual budget, my budget overall is very, very flexible. And that's because I've designed it in a way to where at least half of my expenses are discretionary, meaning that I can choose to spend money on it or I can choose not to spend money if I really have to. And so I am able to use this strategy because of that. New video coming on my budget soon, by the way, so stay tuned. And then one more reason why I use this strategy is that psychologically, it is less taxing on me. When there is a down market, I know that I am adjusting my withdrawals to account for that. And therefore, it's not going to affect my portfolio as much as if I was following the constant dollar strategy and adjusting upwards for inflation. And who knows, in the future, I might actually switch to the constant dollar strategy. That's the great thing, is that you can always make the switch. It's just based on whatever your portfolio value happens to be at that time. You can do a new starting point, basically known as a re-retirement. But enough about me. I want to know from you in the comments below. Which of these two strategies do you think sounds better for you? Which of these two strategies would you use in your early retirement, in your financial independence? Which one do you think appeals to you best? Why or why not? Please let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. We're not done just yet because I have the best part that I saved for last, and that is actually putting these two strategies into action by using a FIRE calculator. More specifically, it's called FICalc. So let's go ahead and move to the computer and see how these two retirement scenarios will play out in a hypothetical retirement. Let's go ahead and create a scenario here. I'm going to be using a long time frame of 50 years for early retirement. I'm going to have a starting initial portfolio value of $1.5 million. We're going to do the portfolio asset allocation of 80% stocks and 20% bonds. There it is, not account for the cash. You can have as much cash as you want, but your investments are going to be 80-20. All right, there you go. All right, and then right here, the withdrawal strategy, we have constant dollar and we have percent of portfolio. That's what we're going to be comparing here. However, we're going to be drawing 4%. So 4% of $1.5 million would be $60,000. And when you are using the constant dollar strategy, most of us are going to be using that and adjusting for inflation because that is what the Trinity study was based on. That's what the 4% rule is based on and all that good stuff. And just for right now, we're not going to be counting any additional income like Social Security or a pension or anything like that. No additional withdrawals, like we're not going to be donating large amounts or anything like that. And we are going to be using all of our available historic data from 1926 and all the way up to 2022. All right. With all of those in place, we can see that we have a success rate of 85%. All right, 5% of that nearly failed, but they didn't end up with $0. Over half of our portfolios ended up with very large amounts at the end, which I believe what we'll see right now is 3 times what we started with. So let's go right here. Portfolio at the end of retirement, the median, half of all were more, half of all were less, $4.8 million, that's what you ended up with. On average, which is actually higher than the median, you ended up with $6.9 million, nearly $7 million. You had a standard deviation in your ending portfolio value of $7 million. Well, obviously that's a very big deviation because some of them ended up at 0. Okay. Now let's go down here to the available spend. This is the biggest difference, what we're going to be comparing between these two strategies. So the median, of course, was $60,000 because that's what we chose. The average was $59,000, and there's a standard deviation of $3.7 thousand. Your largest withdrawal, and of course these are all inflation adjusted, keep that in mind. So the $60,000 is equal to the $60,000, and the smallest was $0 because that's when you ran out of money. So over 50 years, you can see here are the years when it was very good, is in blue, where you ended up with a large portfolio, over 300% of what you started with. Less than 35% of your portfolio value is the yellow ones, and the red ones is where you ran out of money completely if you started your retirement in those years. Let's compare that to the percentage of portfolio withdrawal strategy. So we go over here, we can change our withdrawal strategy. Let me scroll up first though, go back up here, just summary. We can change it right here to the percentage of portfolio strategy. We're going to be using 4% as well. But then right here, we have a minimum annual withdrawal, which means that we're going to make sure we withdraw a certain amount, regardless of the percent that it is of the portfolio. This is just more realistic because you literally sometimes can't withdraw too little because you're relying off of your investments. So let's go ahead and use 10% less than the starting value of 4%. So we know that 4% of $1.5 million is $60,000 per year. So I'm going to use 10% less of that, or 90% of $60,000, which should be, if my math is correct, $54,000. So we're going to withdraw no less than $54,000. You're going to at least get $54,000 out of it. Because if we don't put that, it would be a 100% success rate because it was always a percentage of the portfolio. However, when we add this minimum withdrawal, it might change that. Watch. Boom, there we go. So the success rate went up to 93%. Compared to what we had before, which I believe was 85%. I have a pretty bad short-term memory, by the way. So that is that. Nearly failed, only 1% nearly failed. Large portfolios, though, you had much less chance of having a large ending portfolio, 13%. Look at here, your median ending portfolio was actually 2.3 million, average 2.6 million, standard deviation of 1.7 million. Now let's go down here to the available spend. So the median available spend was $71,800. Your average was $87,000. Standard deviation, look at this, $43,000 standard deviation. Such a huge swing in the how much you can withdraw or not withdraw. Your largest available spending year was $381,000, which is insane, by the way. And your smallest was $0 because that was the time you ran out of money. Go down here to our simulations. Again, similar years. You can see it's very terrible if you retired in the 60s, the mid 60s, late 60s. You have only one that is close to becoming, this is at 1%. That's less than 35% of what it started with. You have a few really amazing years right here, and all the other ones were, pretty average. It didn't end up with 3 times more, and you didn't end up with running out of money or less than 35%. So you can see that the percent of portfolio withdrawal strategy, you have a higher chance of success. However, you don't have that built-in inflation adjustment, and you don't have a more steady amount that you're going to be withdrawing. The standard deviation of how much you could spend was drastically different. And this is just one small example. This is just one way that you can look at 2 different ways you can retire early. I have a much more complete and full guide on investing your way to achieve financial independence that I think you should definitely check out. It's going to pop up on the screen right after I get off the screen. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from OnCashFlow.com, and I hope to see you next time. Oh, stop recording. Now let's first start with this type, it is actually pretty simple. Now, theoretically, you have 0.25. You can do that. You can do 1% every 3 months.